This video is made possible through patron support. Thank you.
For these budget deck tech episodes, I follow a few rules. I'm building these decks for under $30 using Scryfall pricing. This cost excludes the Oathbreaker itself if it costs over $5, and this cost excludes basic lands. I assume you already own those. I build these decks using the 6x6 method, meaning 6 cards for 6 strategies to make the deck work. As I'm explaining the cards, I'll also be explaining how to pilot the deck and how to win with it. Entering the Sanctum today is Tyvar Kell from Kaldheim. Tyvar is a royal member of Kaldheim's Elvish Kingdom and the younger brother of King Harald. He's an extreme extrovert, always seeking allies to engage in glorious battles with, and be able to sing victory ballads at feasts in the aftermath. His ambitions led him to meet the Planeswalker Kaya, who revealed that Tyvar was a Planeswalker as well, and had unknowingly visited planes outside of Kaldheim, not just the Kaldheim realms. With this newfound knowledge, he aided Kaya in hunting Tibalt, disguised as the god of mischief Valki. Tibalt set the Doomskar in motion, unleashing legions of demons from Immersturm into another realm, causing chaos and destruction abound. Tyvar was able to persuade his brother to intervene, bringing the elven armies to push back the demon armies. After victory, Tyvar reunited with Kaya and decided to walk the multiverse, leaving the realms of Kaldheim to find those in need of his aid. Tyvar costs 2 green and starts with 3 loyalty. He has a static ability that gives elves we control the ability to tap to create black mana, effectively making our creatures into mana dorks. His +1 ability places a +1/+1 counter on an elf, it gets untapped, and gains Death Touch until the end of the turn. His 0 ability creates a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, and his ultimate -6 ability grants us an emblem that reads, whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until end of turn, and you draw 2 cards. Tyvar is fairly narrow in his skill set, meaning you'll only ever see him in an elf tribal deck. Luckily for us, Wizards of the Coast gave us an elf tribal commander precon from Kaldheim, so we have an easy pool to pick from to make this deck. The signature spell for the deck is Harvest Season. It reads, search our library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of tapped creatures we control, and put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle our library. The idea is, while you have Tyvar out, you can use his static ability to tap all of our elves down, generating mana, and then using Harvest Season to pull a big chunk of our land base from our deck onto the battlefield. We can rinse and repeat this process turn after turn until our library has no more lands. Then we can ultimate Tyvar, making for an explosive turn of throwing out hastened elves and accumulating a steady supply of card draw. So, with our Oathbreaker and signature spell in mind, let's check out our first strategy, Early Birds. Elvish Mystic is our natural 1-drop mana dork. Miara, Thorn of the Glade, is our only 2-drop creature that gains us cards as our elves die, and Rise the Exiled is a 3-drop that can gain us life as we accumulate more elves. Since we're building from a commander precon, we don't have a lot of low mana value cards in the deck. If you want to break out of the precon, my first edits would be adding in more mana dorks similar to Elvish Mystic. Up next is Timberwatch Elf, who can give a super boost to a single target, granting additional power and toughness equal to the amount of elves we control. And note that this doesn't have to be a target creature that we control, so this elf can be used to play politics and help a friend push through into an enemy. Imperious Perfect grants our elves a +1/+1 boost, and then subsequently can generate elf warrior tokens at the cost of 1 green and a tap. Harald, King of Skemfar, is the last of the early birds. He has the useful keyword Menace, and when he enters the battlefield, he can fish out an elf from the top 5 cards of our deck and put it into our hand for a future turn. Coming up next is Strategy 2, Mana Makers. Here we have the classic Arcane Signet, along with Canopy Tactician and Elvish Archdruid, that can tap for a lot of mana with our Oathbreaker's first loyalty ability. Marwyn the Nurturer and Wirewood Channeler function the same way, having the capability of tapping for loads of mana to use. Note that Wirewood Channeler taps for X mana of any one color equal to the amount of elves on the battlefield, not just our own. So if an opponent has any elves or changelings, we'll be grabbing that mana as well. Lastly is our signature spell Harvest Season. The safest kind of ramp is Land Ramp. Our elves that tap for mana can potentially be removed by opponents, but our lands should be staying where they are unless we're up against heavy land hate. Here, Harvest Season shines as we'll be playing creature heavy, and whenever we're able to play this card, it means that our Oathbreaker is out, ensuring we can safely tap our creatures. It simultaneously ramps us for future turns, and helps make our draws more efficient since we won't be encountering as many lands in the library. With plenty of mana now, let's look into how to make plenty of forces as well with Strategy 3, Elven Army. Wolverine Riders can make us an elf token at each upkeep, and give us a steady stream of life gain. Liza Lana Huntmaster gives us a bonus 1/1 elf warrior whenever we cast an elf spell, and Return Upon the Tide can return us a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield, and if it's an elf, which it most likely will be, we'll gain 2 more elf tokens. Elvish Promenade and Elven Ambush do the same thing, doubling the amount of elves we control. One does it at instant speed and the other at sorcery speed.
These make for good signature spells as well, but since there aren't a lot of early game elf plays in this shaved down precon, it's harder to make work. With some card edits and one of these cards in the signature spell slot, you can potentially have a whole lot of elves in the early game. Lastly, we have Tyvar Kell himself, whose bare minimum play for the turn is creating a 1/1 elf warrior token. Ideally, we'll be constantly attempting to uptake him to reach his ultimate, but if we need forces, he's always there to lend a hand. So, we have mana, we have a token army, now what? On strategy 4, Trained for War. Pride of the Perfect is an enchantment that boosts our elves' power by 2, so even if all we have are 1/1 tokens, this effectively would triple their damage output. Numa, Jiraga Chieftain, is a good mana sink for all we've gained, turning mana into +1/+1 counters. Numa reads, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we may pay XX. When we do, distribute X/1/1 counters among any number of target elves. We could either dump them into a single elf, or give it a spread across our army. Either way, it's a good effect to utilize. Dwynnin, Guiltleaf Dane, is a more static trainer, giving a +1/+1 boost to all of our elves, and gains us life whenever she attacks. Crown of Skemfar boosts its wearer for each elf we control and gives it reach, and it can be reused from the graveyard if its bearer falls in battle. A good target to give it to is Cultivator of Blades, which disperses its power to the rest of our attacking creatures. The more elves in play, the higher boosts they get. Endray's Forerunners is a good game finisher. When it enters the battlefield, the rest of our creatures get +2/+2, Vigilance, and Trample. Really, the last few cards are just differing forms of Craterhoof Behemoth, but that single card costs more than this entire deck combined. If Brute Force isn't enough to finish opponents, we do have other means. Let's see it in Strategy 5, Bleed Them Out. Ruthless Winnower punishes our opponents for not playing elves, forcing them to sacrifice a non-elf at the beginning of their turn. Poison Tip Archer makes the punishment worse, making each opponent lose 1 life every time a creature dies. This also protects our board. If we have a wide army and it gets board wiped, Poison Tip Archer will potentially win us the game with all the life loss. Elderfang Venom has essentially the same idea. Whenever an elf we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life, and has an added bonus of giving attacking elves Death Touch. Shaman of the Pack enters the battlefield and ruins a single opponent's day by making them lose life equal to the amount of elves we control, which should hopefully be a lot. Skemfar Shadow Sage does the same but wider, either hitting all opponents for the amount of elves we have, or gaining us life if the scenario demands it. Last, we have Lathril, Blade of the Elves. On top of creating elves herself, whenever she deals combat damage to a player, her tap ability takes 10 elves, but then forces each opponent to lose 10 life and we gain 10 life. In Commander, that's not quite a biggie, but in Oathbreaker, that can be a game-winning ability. To round out the deck, there's a few more things we'll need, so let's see Strategy 6, Tactical Maneuvers. Putrefy, Binding the Old Gods, and Reclamation Sage are our targeted removal spells, mostly for anything we can't effectively remove through combat. Beast Whisperer helps to keep a steady flow of cards in hand while we play our elves, and Abomination of Llanowar can be a surprise drop with the potential of high stats if we have a large board presence, or a large graveyard if the game has gone long. And finally, we have Casualties of War, which can pretty much clear out a board of anything too troublesome with a grand point-click-delete. That's all the cards, so let's check out the final price. As singles, our most expensive cards are Lathril, Blade of the Elves, and Arcane Signet, as they are Precon exclusive cards, and Tyvar Kell himself. In total with Tyvar included, this deck comes to $29.57. Excluding the expensive Oathbreaker, it's only $19.47, which is pretty fair considering this is all from a Precon deck that's about $20 MSRP, plus you get a few extra cards out of it. That's all for this episode. Let me know in the comments what you'd add in to shake free of the solid Precon. And if you're not quite ready to planeswalk away, check out my Discord server where we talk and play Oathbreaker, links in the description, and check out my Patreon to get full access and other awesome benefits. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.